It's the silence that gets you first, that low, ever-present hum of modern life, just gone. You check your phone, no signal. The screen is a black, dead mirror. You flick a light switch, nothing. You try another, still nothing. For over 300 million people across nearly 4 million square miles, it's a single, unifying experience. Someone, or something, has pulled the plug on America. The world's most advanced nation has been plunged into a silent, digital darkness. No buzzing appliances, no glowing screens, no distant roar of traffic or hum of air conditioners. Just an eerie quiet, broken only by the occasional confused shout or car horn from the street outside. In this moment, the United States, the land of innovation, endless connectivity, and 24/7 convenience, feels like a ghost town from an old Western movie, but on a continental scale. This blackout isn't temporary. It's not a storm knocking out a neighborhood or a glitch in the system that'll be fixed by morning. This is total grid failure. Every power plant offline, every substation fried, every transformer silenced. And with it, the internet vanishes. No Wi-Fi, no cellular data, no fiber optics pulsing with information. Social media, email, streaming services, online banking, all gone in an instant. Your smart home is dumb, your electric car is a statue, and your world shrinks to what you can see, touch, and hear without amplification. The nightmare begins not with explosions or invasions, but with that deafening silence. And as the hours tick by, one question echoes in every mind. How long can we hold out? How long before the thin threads holding society together snap under the weight of darkness? The premise. This isn't a local blackout from a storm. This is a total nationwide failure of the electrical grid and the internet. It's a scenario that security experts and government agencies have warned about for years. The cause could be anything: a massive cyber attack by a foreign adversary, a catastrophic solar flare like the Carrington event of 1859, but amplified in our tech-dependent era, an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, from a high-altitude nuclear detonation, or even a cascading failure of our aging, strained infrastructure under extreme weather or human error. But the why doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is the question that follows. What happens next? How long could the United States truly hold out before the complex systems that define our civilization completely collapse? To understand this, we need to grasp just how interdependent our society is. The US power grid is a marvel of engineering, divided into 3 major interconnections: Eastern, Western, and Texas, powering everything from homes to hospitals, factories, to farms. It delivers electricity to 330 million people, supporting an economy worth $25 trillion. But it's vulnerable. A 2018 National Infrastructure Advisory Council, NIAC, report warned that a catastrophic power outage could last days, weeks, or even years, leading to widespread societal breakdown. Add the internet blackout, cutting off 90% of Americans who rely on it for communication, work, banking, and entertainment, and the crisis multiplies. No more Zoom calls, no Amazon deliveries, no GPS navigation, no real-time news. The digital backbone snaps, leaving physical isolation in its wake. We're going to walk through the cascading failure of critical infrastructure, day by day and week by week. This isn't just a guess. It's a timeline based on real-world vulnerabilities, government reports from FEMA and DHS, and expert analysis of just how fragile our modern world truly is. Journalist Ted Koppel's book, Lights Out, estimates that in a prolonged blackout, up to 90% of the population could perish within a year due to starvation, disease, and violence. We'll explore why, drawing from past events like Hurricane Katrina, where New Orleans saw societal collapse in 36 hours, and Puerto Rico's Hurricane Maria, months without power, thousands dead. Buckle up. This is a sobering look at resilience, or the lack thereof, in the face of total darkness. Treat the first 24 hours the illusion of normalcy. For most, the first few hours feel strange, but not catastrophic. It's an inconvenience, a massive, confusing one, sure, but it's just a power outage. Kids, happy for a break from school, might even think it's an adventure, playing board games by candlelight or telling stories in the dark. For the adults, though, a creeping unease starts to set in as the minutes turn to hours. The fridge stops humming, the AC falls silent, and the constant glow of screens vanishes. You reach for your phone out of habit, but there's no Wi-Fi, no 5G, no updates from friends or news apps. The world feels smaller, cut off. The first thing to disappear is information. With no TV, no internet, and cellular networks immediately overwhelmed by a surge of calls and texts, the nation is deaf and blind. Why is the power out? Is it just my city, or is it everywhere? Nobody knows for sure. Cell towers have backup batteries lasting 4 to 8 hours, but the sheer volume of panicked traffic, everyone trying to call loved ones or emergency services, crashes the system almost instantly. Major telecom facilities might stretch to 24 hours with generators, but for the average person, their smartphone becomes a useless brick as the battery drains without recharging options. You might try your car radio, and if you're lucky, you could pick up an AM station with government emergency broadcasts from the Emergency Alert System, EAS, but only a fraction of the population would hear it. Most have ditched traditional radios for streaming. FEMA's National Response Framework assumes some communication survives in localized disasters, but in a nationwide blackout, even EAS struggles without power to transmitters. Most people are stuck in their own little bubble, their world suddenly shrunk to the size of their street or neighborhood. Rumors spread mouth to mouth. It's a cyber attack. It's a solar flare. Help is coming soon. But without facts, fear fills the void. Food and water seem fine for now. You've got groceries in the pantry, leftovers in the fridge. You turn the tap, and water still flows, thanks to residual pressure in municipal water towers which hold 3 to 5 days' supply for cities. But this is a dangerous illusion. Those towers rely on electric pumps to refill, and without power, they're finite. Water treatment plants halt purification, so even the flowing water could soon carry contaminants. In rural areas with wells, hand pumps or gravity-fed systems might buy time, but urban dwellers are ticking toward crisis. By hour 12, as the sun goes down, the true scale of the problem becomes visible. From space, the United States, normally a brilliant web of light stretching from coast to coast, would be a patch of profound darkness, with only scattered campfires or car headlights piercing the void. Satellite imagery from past events like the 2003 Northeast blackout shows how quickly urban glow fades. On the ground, with no traffic signals, intersections become chaotic death traps. Fender benders turn into pile-ups, blocking roads. The sound of sirens becomes constant as emergency services are hampered by gridlocked streets and their own limited fuel reserves. Inside your home, another clock is ticking. The food in your refrigerator is only safe for about 4 hours without power, as temperatures rise above 40 degrees. A full freezer can hold out for up to 48 hours if kept closed, but open it once, and that drops dramatically. Perishables like milk, meat, and eggs spoil fast, forcing tough choices: eat now or risk food poisoning later. For those on life support, insulin-dependent diabetics, oxygen users, or dialysis patients, the clock is even shorter. Home medical devices fail without recharge, and pharmacies can't dispense without systems. As the first 24 hours end, the sense of novelty is replaced by a gnawing anxiety. The adventure is over, this is real, and it's only the beginning. In rural areas, self-reliant folks with generators or solar panels might feel okay, but in cities like New York or Los Angeles, where 80% of residents live in high-rises dependent on elevators and pumped water, vulnerability sets in fast. DHS reports estimate that in a major blackout, urban panic could lead to isolated looting within hours. The illusion of normalcy holds, but barely. America is still standing, but the cracks are forming. Days 2 to 3, the breakdown begins. By day 2, the thin veneer of civilization starts to crack under the weight of accumulating failures. The most critical breakdown, the one that kicks off the next cascade of chaos, is water. Across the country, water pressure in municipal systems drops to zero as towers empty without electric pumps to refill them. Taps run dry, toilets don't flush, and showers become a luxury of the past. Without electricity, water treatment plants can't purify raw water from reservoirs or rivers, turning even available sources into potential health hazards laden with bacteria and contaminants. Suddenly, getting a clean drink of water becomes a life-threatening risk. Millions in cities have no access to clean water besides the few bottles they might have stockpiled at home. FEMA recommends 1 gallon per person per day, but most households have far less. This is where the crisis shifts from mere inconvenience to a full-blown public health emergency. Without running water, sanitation disappears entirely. Waste builds up in homes and streets, creating breeding grounds for diseases like cholera, dysentery, and E. coli, which thrive in unsanitary conditions. Historical parallels abound. During Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, lack of clean water led to a spike in bacterial infections, contributing to thousands of excess deaths months after the storm. In the US, urban areas with high population density would see outbreaks within days, overwhelming already strained medical resources. At the same time, the financial system evaporates like morning dew. Credit cards are useless without electronic verification, ATMs are dark bricks, and banks are closed doors. The entire digital economy, trillions of dollars a day in transactions, has ceased to exist overnight. The only currency that matters now is the cash in your wallet or hidden at home, but even that assumes people are willing to trade. This sparks the first wave of widespread panic as reality sinks in. People who were patient on day 1 are now desperate, forming long lines at any open store or gas station accepting cash. But without power, point-of-sale systems fail and chaos ensues. They rush to grocery stores, which quickly turn into scenes of bedlam reminiscent of Black Friday riots, but with survival at stake. Without electricity, registers and security cameras don't work, lights are out, and refrigeration fails. Some store owners try to operate by flashlight or daylight, taking only cash and bartering, but they are quickly overrun by crowds. Shelves are stripped bare in hours as people hoard canned goods, batteries, and bottled water. The idea of paying is quickly replaced by taking, as desperation overrides social norms. The rule of law frays like an old rope, with primal needs for food and water taking over civilized behavior. Police, if they can respond at all, are outnumbered and outgunned in the frenzy. Meanwhile, another critical system grinds to a halt: transportation. Your car is your only link to the outside world, but it's a finite resource in a fuel-starved landscape. Gas stations need electric pumps to draw fuel from underground tanks. Without power, every station in America becomes a useless reservoir holding millions of gallons you can't access. Electric vehicles are stranded statues, their charging stations dead. Trucks can't deliver goods, trains stop on tracks without signals, and planes are grounded without air traffic control. The just-in-time supply chain that keeps stores stocked collapses, leaving warehouses full but unreachable. Emergency services are now in a desperate fight for survival themselves. Police and fire departments are overwhelmed with calls for help. Medical emergencies, fires from improper candle use, accidents in the dark. But their ability to respond is crumbling fast. Their vehicles are running out of fuel with no resupply, dispatch systems are down, and communication is reduced to short-range radios or runners. Coordination between agencies fails without internet or phone lines, leading to isolated responses. In cities, first responders might abandon posts to protect their own families, accelerating the breakdown. Hospitals are one of the last bastions of the old world, but they are islands under siege in a sea of desperation. By law, hospitals must have backup generators and enough fuel to run critical life support systems for 96 hours, kicking in within 10 seconds of outage. These keep ventilators, monitors, and operating rooms going, but they're not designed to power the entire facility, just essentials. Elective surgeries stop, non-critical areas go dark, and fuel rations begin. In this scenario, no resupply trucks are coming. Diesel deliveries halt without pumps or transport. As day 3 ends, hospital administrators face horrific choices: which patients to prioritize for the dwindling power, which machines to turn off, and how to handle the influx of dehydration and injury cases from the streets. Without refrigeration, medications spoil. Without clean water, hygiene plummets, inviting infections. The death toll starts climbing not from the blackout directly, but from its knock-on effects. By the end of day 3, the breakdown is no longer subtle. Panic has set in, with reports of sporadic violence over resources. Rural areas with wells and generators hold out better, but urban centers like Los Angeles or Chicago teeter on the edge. The illusion of quick recovery fades, replaced by the dawning realization that this could be long-term. America is still holding out, but the foundations are shaking. The first week, cascading failure. As the first week closes, cascading failure becomes a terrifying reality, a term from engineering that perfectly captures how each broken system breaks another, creating a domino effect that consumes the foundations of society. The most significant collapse during this time is the supply chain, the invisible web that keeps America fed, medicated, and functional. The modern world runs on just-in-time delivery, a lean system designed for efficiency, not resilience. Grocery stores don't keep weeks of food in stock. They get daily deliveries from distribution centers hundreds of miles away. Pharmacies don't stockpile medicine. They rely on a constant flow from manufacturers. This entire system is coordinated by the internet for tracking and orders, powered by electricity for refrigeration and logistics, and it's all gone, vanished like a popped bubble. The food on store shelves is gone by day 3 or 4, stripped in the initial panic. The food in warehouses can't be moved without trucks, which can't refuel without electric pumps. The drivers have no way to communicate routes or schedules, and are likely home protecting their families amid the chaos. Within a week, almost every grocery store in the country is an empty shell, windows smashed, aisles littered with debris. People are now facing starvation, with urban dwellers particularly vulnerable. FEMA estimates that most Americans have only 3 to 5 days' worth of food at home. Backyard gardens or community farms might sustain small groups, but for 80% urban population, foraging in parks or raiding abandoned homes becomes the norm. The same goes for medicine, turning chronic conditions into acute crises. Patients who rely on refrigerated drugs like insulin face a death sentence as supplies spoil. Pharmacies were emptied in the first few days of panic buying, and resupply chains are severed. A national strategic stockpile of medical supplies exists, managed by HHS, but distributing it without transportation, communication, or power is an impossible logistical nightmare. Trucks can't move, helicopters need fuel, and coordination relies on now-defunct networks. Government agencies like FEMA have plans, like the National Response Framework, to coordinate action and stabilize communities with emergency supplies. But these plans are built for localized disasters where resources can be brought in from unaffected areas. In a nationwide blackout, there is no outside. Every state, every city is on its own, with no federal convoys rolling in. By day 7, for most people, The illusion of government authority is shattered like glass underfoot. There are no police patrols on every corner. Departments are understaffed, fuelless, and focused on their own survival. No National Guard convoys delivering MREs and water bottles. This power vacuum is filled by two things: chaos and community, often in uneasy tension. In many areas, particularly densely populated cities, survival becomes a violent individual struggle. Looting evolves from opportunistic grabs to organized raids on homes and warehouses. It's no longer about stealing a TV, it's about breaking into a neighbor's house for a can of soup or a bottle of water. The strong prey on the weak, with gangs forming around resource caches. Violence spikes as desperation mounts. DHS simulations predict a rise in crime by 500% in urban areas within a week. But in other places, small pockets of cooperation emerge like oases in a desert. Neighbors who barely knew each other are now banding together, pooling resources like canned goods and tools, organizing watches to guard against looters, and sharing skills honed from hobbies or professions. A former carpenter builds barricades, a nurse tends to wounds with limited supplies, a retired soldier trains basic defense. These small, local communities, perhaps a neighborhood block or rural town, become the only form of governance and security left, enforcing rules through consensus or force. Prepper communities with stockpiles and off-grid setups thrive relatively, but even they face depletion. For those in cities, the situation becomes untenable by midweek. With no food, water, or safety nets, a great migration begins, a mass exodus on foot, bikes, or whatever vehicles have fuel left. Millions start to walk out of the cities, hoping to find sustenance in rural areas or family farms. This creates a refugee crisis on a scale never seen before in America, dwarfing historical events like the Dust Bowl migration. These unprepared urban refugees, dehydrated and malnourished, are often met with suspicion and hostility by the rural communities they approach. Fences go up, armed patrols form. The roads become dangerous, contested territories littered with abandoned cars and makeshift camps prone to ambushes and disease outbreaks. After just 1 week, the United States is no longer a unified nation under one flag. It's a fragmented collection of besieged cities and fortified towns, separated by a landscape of desperation and lawlessness. The federal government, if it exists in bunkers with limited generators, can't project power without logistics. States declare emergencies, but without comms, they're islands. The death toll creeps into the hundreds of thousands from dehydration, accidents, and initial violence. America is holding on by threads, but those threads are fraying fast. Weeks 2 for the new reality. Entering the second week, life in the blackout United States is driven by raw biological necessity, a primal regression to survival basics that strips away centuries of progress. The search for water becomes constant and all-consuming. Any natural source like a river, lake, or stream turns into a hub of activity, drawing desperate crowds. But these sources are also potential flashpoints for conflict and disease, as untreated water carries pathogens. Knowing how to purify water by boiling over fires or using improvised filters from cloth and charcoal becomes a skill more precious than a doctor's degree in pre-blackout times. FEMA guidelines suggest boiling for 1 minute kills most bacteria, but without fuel for fires, many resort to risky, untreated sources, leading to epidemics of gastrointestinal illnesses. Starvation is now widespread and unrelenting. The canned goods and non-perishables from homes and stores are depleted or hoarded. People are foraging in parks for edible plants, hunting urban wildlife like squirrels or pigeons, and eating things they never would have considered before: pets, zoo animals, or even roadkill in desperation. The nation's livestock, billions of chickens in factory farms and millions of cattle on ranches, are mostly dead by now, dependent on automated feeders and water systems that failed in the first few days. Without electricity, these industrial farms become mass graves, attracting scavengers and spreading disease. In rural areas, small farms might slaughter animals for immediate consumption, but distribution is impossible without transport. The 96-hour window for hospitals has long since passed, their generators silent as fuel runs dry. The last vestiges of advanced medical care vanish, surgery suites go dark, ventilators stop, and ICUs become morgues. A simple cut from scavenging can become a deadly infection without antibiotics. A broken bone from a fall in the dark turns into a permanent disability without X-rays or casts. Chronic illnesses that were manageable with daily meds, diabetes, heart conditions, epilepsy, become fatal sentences. The death toll, already in the millions from dehydration, starvation, and violence in week 1, climbs even faster due to disease outbreaks and the total collapse of healthcare. Without refrigeration, vaccine stockpiles spoil. Without clean water, hygiene plummets, inviting cholera and typhoid. Historical analogues like the 1918 flu pandemic show how quickly diseases spread in unsanitary conditions, but without modern medicine, mortality rates could exceed 50% in crowded areas. By the third week, society has fundamentally changed from a connected, high-tech nation to a patchwork of survivalist fiefdoms. The federal government is a distant memory, its bunkers like Cheyenne Mountain or Raven Rock perhaps operational with backup power, but unable to project authority without fuel, comms, or loyal forces. Power is entirely local. Neighborhood councils, town mayors, or self-appointed leaders enforce rules with whatever arms they have. In some areas, brutal warlords have taken control, hoarding water sources and food caches, ruling through fear and violence like feudal lords. In other regions, more democratic communities have formed, creating ad hoc constitutions, sharing labor for farming or security, and establishing trade with nearby groups. These are islands of relative stability in an ocean of chaos, but they are fiercely protective. Outsiders are turned away or worse, deepening divisions. The mass migration from the cities slows not because conditions improve, but because the journey has become too perilous and the travelers too weak from malnutrition and exposure. Highways are clogged with abandoned vehicles, becoming de facto barriers or ambush sites for bandits. The urban centers that once powered the American economy, New York with its 8 million, LA with 4 million, are now necropolises, silent tombs for millions who couldn't or wouldn't leave, succumbing to starvation or violence. Scavengers pick through the ruins, but diseases from unburied bodies make cities plague zones. The military is fractured like a shattered mirror. While bases have their own generators and stockpiles, lasting weeks or months, they face the same problems: fuel depletion, food shortages, and desertions as soldiers prioritize family survival. Units are torn between following fragmented orders from a silent Pentagon and going rogue to secure local areas. Some bases may become secure zones, offering refuge to civilians in exchange for labor, but the idea of the US military retaking an entire continent is no longer realistic. Logistics chains are broken, aircraft grounded without fuel. Their mission shifts from national defense to self-preservation, perhaps establishing militarized enclaves. As the first month ends, the population of the United States has been catastrophically reduced. Some in the prepper community, like those citing Koppel's Lights Out, speculate about a mortality rate as high as 90% within the first year of such a collapse due to interconnected failures. While that number is speculative and debated, it's clear that by the 1-month mark, tens of millions are dead from direct causes like dehydration and starvation, and indirect ones like violence and disease. The new reality is a pre-industrial existence, a daily grind for the most basic elements of survival: hunting, gathering, bartering. Technology's remnants, like solar panels or windmills in prepared communities, offer glimmers of hope, but for most, it's back to fire, tools, and muscle. 1 month and beyond, total collapse or pockets of stability. After 1 month, the question is no longer how long can we hold out, but what is left to hold. The United States as a single political entity has ceased to exist, its constitution a forgotten document in dusty libraries. It has fractured into thousands of disconnected self-governing territories, some as small as a neighborhood block, others as large as a county, bound by geography, resources, and shared hardship. Federal symbols like the stars and stripes might fly in some enclaves as a nod to the past, but real power lies with local leaders who control water wells or farmland. The long-term future depends on two things: knowledge and resources, both scarce in this new world. Communities with people who possess pre-industrial skills, farming without tractors, blacksmithing for tools, food preservation through salting or smoking, basic engineering for water wheels, have a fighting chance. They might be able to build a sustainable agrarian existence, planting crops by hand, raising livestock in small herds, and creating small, stable societies reminiscent of 19th century frontiers. These groups could trade with neighbors for salt or metals, forming loose alliances. Rural Midwest or Appalachian areas with fertile land and low population density might fare best, evolving into self-sufficient communes. For the vast majority, however, the future is bleak and unforgiving. The knowledge of how to live without technology has been lost to most urbanites and suburbanites who grew up reliant on apps and supermarkets. These groups will likely devolve into a state of perpetual scavenging, a nomadic hunter-gatherer existence amid the ruins of the 21st century, picking through abandoned malls for canned goods or stripping copper from wires to trade. But without skills, they face extinction, wiped out by disease epidemics, no vaccines, no sanitation, famine when scavenging yields diminish, or conflict with better organized groups. Winter would be particularly deadly in northern states, with hypothermia claiming millions without heating. FEMA estimates 50% mortality in cold snaps without power. The idea of restarting the grid is a distant fantasy whispered around campfires but impossible in practice. A black start, the complex process of bringing power plants online one by one without an existing grid, requires immense coordination, skilled engineers, and functioning equipment. After months of neglect, corrosion, or sabotage, infrastructure like transformers, which take years to build, would be unsalvageable in many places. Fuel for generators, diesel or natural gas, would be contested resources hoarded by survivors. Even if a pocket restarted local power, scaling to national levels would take decades, assuming knowledge survives. Journalist Ted Koppel, in his book Lights Out, warned that a major cyber attack could lead to a blackout lasting not weeks, but months or even years, with societal collapse following swiftly. The challenge isn't just flipping a switch, it's rebuilding an entire industrial ecosystem from scratch, mining raw materials, forging parts, training workers, all without modern tools. In this long-term reality, the map of North America would be redrawn by geography and resources. Communities would cluster around clean water sources like the Great Lakes or Mississippi River, turning them into fortified hubs. Mountain ranges like the Rockies and Appalachians would become impassable borders, isolating regions. Deserts in the southwest would become death zones without irrigation, while fertile plains in the Midwest might support larger populations. Would humanity survive? Yes, in scattered pockets of resilience, perhaps 10–20% of the pre-blackout population based on prepper estimates, and historical analogies like the Black Death, which killed 30–60% of Europe but society rebuilt. But the civilization we know as the United States of America would become a cautionary tale, a story of a society that reached for the stars but forgot it was standing on a foundation of wires and light, vulnerable to a single pull of the plug. It wouldn't hold out indefinitely. It would break under the weight of its own complexity, and then it would be gone, leaving survivors to forge a new, simpler world from the ashes. CTA in conclusion, the scenario we've just walked through is an extreme worst-case analysis drawn from government simulations and expert warnings. And while it serves as a stark warning, it also highlights a fundamental truth. Our systems are fragile, but human resilience is a powerful force that has pulled societies back from the brink time and again. This thought experiment isn't about creating fear or paranoia, but about fostering an appreciation for the complex, interconnected world we've built and encouraging a conversation about how to make it stronger and more resilient. The US Department of Energy and other groups are working on grid modernization initiatives, like hardening against cyber threats and integrating renewables for distributed power to improve reliability and security. But vulnerabilities remain a serious concern, as seen in recent events like the 2021 Texas freeze or Colonial Pipeline hack. What do you think is the most overlooked vulnerability in our modern society? Cyber threats, aging infrastructure, or something else? Share your thoughts in the comments below. How would you prepare for such a blackout? Do you have a generator, water stockpile, or community plan? And if you found this analysis valuable, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the systems that shape our world, from geopolitical what-ifs to survival strategies. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. Knowledge could be your best defense. Thank you for watching, and remember, in a world of lights, don't take the hum for granted.